Well, hello there, old man Steve, and I'm here to tell you another story about my early life, which I had promised you. Um, I'm talking about back in the 1950s. I graduated from high school in 1957. I was 18 years old, a little over 18. Actually, back then, I lived in Dallas, Texas, and the school year started September 1st, and my birthday is September 4th. So I had to wait a whole year to start school when I was a kid. So that made me almost a year older than everybody in my class as I went to school through the years. But that didn't make me any smarter. I was very naive when I was younger. I was what they call a late bloomer. And that's part of my story, and I think that explains a lot of things about me. My senior year of 1957, I got involved with a group of theater people in Dallas, little theater, amateur theater group. And I would go over after school, and then when school was out, I spent all my time over learning. I painted scenery and built sets and all that stuff that you do with amateur theater, little theater groups. And I mostly worked backstage doing the props and the lighting and stuff like that. I wasn't an actor, although I was in a couple of shows, but not just small parts. I guess I was too shy or too not sure if I could do it or whatever. Anyway, but I enjoyed the atmosphere and the people that I knew, and I met a lot of interesting people. And I stayed gone most of the time, which really infuriated my mother, because I was still living at home, and she said, "You get messed up with them kind of people." She called them kind of people, whatever that means. Anyway, I was involved with them kind of people. So one of the kids that I was running around with at the time, this was in 57, 58, was Brenda Vaccaro. Well, Brenda Vaccaro became if you don't know who she is, you may be too young to know who she is, you need to Google her. But she became a Broadway star and a movie star. And she still acts from time to time. She's probably kind of semi-retired, I don't know. I used to stay in touch with her, but I've lost touch in the last few years. But she was in school just like me. We were around the same age. I guess she's my age. We didn't go to the same school, but we were both in school. And there was a gal named Helen Smith that was part of that group, and there was a guy, H.R.Poindexter. He did the lighting, and H.R. he went on to do lighting for the Dallas Summer Musicals, which was a professional group. He went to SMU, and I guess he took all of that in college. I don't know. He was a nice fellow. I liked him, and we were all friends. We all ran around together. And he later went to New York and did lighting for Broadway shows, and he won a Tony Award. So he did very well for himself. And so that was Brenda. She became famous. H.R. became famous. And Helen Smith. Well, Helen Smith later, and then this was like the next year or in the next few years, she took up stripping, and she started dancing at the clubs in Dallas, and one of the clubs was owned by Jack Ruby, I forgot which club it was of his, but anyway, she's also was investigated when they did the Kennedy assassination, and they wrote the Warren Commission. Was interviewed, and because she supposedly saw Jack Ruby with Oswald at one time, and she was a witness to that, and so she's in the Warren Commission. And her name for her stripper name was Pixie Lynn. Now there was another stripper named Little Lynn or something like that, but it's not the same one. That's two different people. Pixie Lynn was Helen Smith. And prior to all of her doing stripping, one weekend she and a guy in Dallas that we used to hang out at a coffee house that was back prior to the Beatnik Coffee House days. It was a place called the Eighth Day on McKinney Avenue in Dallas, and we used to go there at night after working at the theater or the bars closed or whatever, and we got this wild hair that we were going to drive to Galveston. Her, Helen, myself, and this guy, his name was Tony Garrett. Tony Garrett was a radio announcer on a program called Music Till Dawn on by American Airlines, and it was a very popular program. And he had that golden, smooth voice that you just made you melt. You know, it just kind of put you to sleep. Beautiful speaking voice, and that's what he did. He was well known. I don't think he was well known at that time, but he became well known. But anyway, Tony, Helen, and I, we decided we were going to go to Galveston. So we hopped in the car and drove to Galveston. Well, that was like a, I don't know, 6-hour drive or something. I don't remember. It was a long drive. And we probably had been drinking. About halfway there, we kind of sobered up and thought, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? We drove to Galveston. We got there. I think the sun was coming up. We went out on the beach and sat and piddled around there for a day, and then got back in the car and headed back to Dallas. But on the way, Helen said she had a friend in Houston, and we stopped in Houston. She called her and they stopped in Houston, and she and Tony and the girl, they decided they were wanted to party, and I was just a fifth wheel. They was just the three of them, and I really didn't know what was going on because that's how naive I was. And Tony said, "Here's the keys to my car, so take it back to Dallas and just leave the keys over the visor, and I'll pick it up when I get back to Dallas." And I gave him my address and everything, and I said okay. And all the way back to Dallas, I'm thinking, I wonder what they're doing. The three of them, a guy and two gals. Well, that's how naive I was. Anyway, so anyway, that's my my story about Helen. But later on, at that same theater, the owners they got Candy Barr. She was if you don't know who Candy Barr is, then you need to Google her, because she was a very famous stripper, and she was probably in one of the first stag movies back then. They called them stag movies, or porno movies. Not like the porno movies today, or so I've heard, but she became quite infamous for that. Plus, she was a stripper at Jack Ruby's Club and other clubs in Dallas and in the area. And so she was a big name, and she was a big draw. So they got her to do a play, Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter. And it was done in the movies by Jane Mansfield. She was going to play the Jane Mansfield part. And Candy Barr, I worked there. I was like 18 years old. I was very naive and kind of shy. And of course, I helped paint the scenery and do all that kind of stuff. And one of my jobs when the show started was I was pull the main curtain when the show started, you know, and then it closed it at intermission. And then when the second act began, the story was about Hollywood, and she was playing a Hollywood starlet, and they had just won the Oscar, so we had an Oscar, and she and this guy would walk on stage at the beginning of the second act. When I pulled the curtain, they would walk on. while they were standing there waiting to start the second act, she would look at me and hold that Oscar and put it down between her legs and says, "You got any Vaseline?" she she would do that to me all the time, and because I would turn red, I would be embarrassed, and she'd get a big. She was just messing with me, and she'd get a big bang out of that one, laugh, and she was always doing stuff like that, or exposing her breast or something, just to make just. She said, "I just want to see him turn red," and I would. Oh, lordy, lordy. Anyway, it was a trip. Anyway, that's my experience with Candy Barr. But I also had experience with another stripper. I don't know how I got involved with strippers, but I did. There was another stripper that worked at Jack Ruby's club and other clubs called Chris Colt. And she was billed Chris Colt in her 45s. And we're not talking about her guns, we're talking about her 45s. And I met her through some other people. This guy, he did costumes at the theater, but he also did costumes for strippers. And I asked him, I said, "Well, why do they have to have costumes? Don't they take their clothes off?" He said, "Well, yeah, they have to have something to take off." And he became the costumer, is that the word, to the local strippers. I all liked what he did, and his price was reasonable and all that. And one time I was over at his apartment, and Chris was there, Chris Colt, and we got to, and I didn't know she was a stripper because she had on like a oversized sweatshirt and jeans, and she had these real thick glasses. I mean, you know how people call like Coke bottle glasses. Yeah, they were really thick because she couldn't see. She was blind as a bat, and she had her hair up like in a ponytail and then no makeup, and she was just cute as a button. And the more we talked, the more she told me that what she did for a living, and I couldn't believe it. And I said, "Well, why do you wear the glasses?" She says, "Well, when I go on," she said, "I don't wear them on stage," but she said, I have to practice, I have to count, I have to mark. I know so many steps to where I go center stage, and so many steps to go backstage and upstage and all that." And she would count, and that because she couldn't see, she couldn't take direction from anybody, she couldn't see the audience because she couldn't. Well, she was without her glasses. She was, like I said, was blind as a bat. And so I got to know her pretty well, and we took a class together. The Dallas Theater Center had just opened. Frank Lloyd Wright had designed the building, and it was like a big deal. And it was a beautiful theater, and it was innovative and new and all that kind of stuff. And they had different classes, acting classes, and they had a mime and movement class. And the guy that did the costumes, I think he must have had like a brochure, or he knew somebody or something, and because I got to where I'd go over there all the time, and Chris would be over there getting new costumes, and it became like a regular deal. And so we talked about this class, and I told her, I said, "You ought to take this class. Maybe it'll help you with your movement on stage, and give you some stuff that you could use in your routine." Well, she thought that was a great idea, and so we took the class together. But nobody at the class, it was like for 4 weeks or something like that. I don't remember, but nobody knew that she was a stripper, and a famous stripper at that. She became famous, but nobody knew that that's what she did. But she said that she was glad that we took the class together, because she was she was very shy, and it was good to have a friend. And she said that it did help her in her routine. So anyway, that's my that's my experience with strippers. You know, I'm always talking about my girlfriend Ginger. She used to be a Las Vegas showgirl. Well, my history with strippers goes way back. I've known some pretty famous ones. Well, anyway, I've just been going on and on and on, but that's my story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.